On Sunday, May 20th, about late afternoon, I interviewed Neil McNerney, an author, therapist, and dad. In the interview, he talks about some of the experiences he's had throughout his life dealing with his occupations. He's a very smart guy who has accomplished a lot in his life, from going to med school to writing a book. Take a listen in to the interview and you'll see what I mean. What were your interests as a kid, and did it really affect kind of what you ended up being?
Actually not. My big interest when I was a kid probably was much more about nature, backpacking, fishing, things like that, hunting, being outdoors. So I was much more involved in thinking about being outside than actually doing things with people. So that shifted probably much more closer to when I was in college.
Cool. So being a therapist socially, is it kind of weird being out socially and just seeing situations happen in front of you? Does your therapist's mind kind of take over and just be like, what are they doing?
Normally not. I used to when I was just beginning, and my wife used to say when we go out to dinner, she'd be like, quit listening to that conversation over there, because it was definitely, I was kind of intrigued by all that stuff. But I can turn it off now pretty easily. I don't, if I see stuff going on in families or with people and stuff, I don't really think of myself as a therapist at that moment. I just kind of shut that off.
So, how is it difficult, and how difficult is it to not be able to talk about work with your family?
It's difficult, but then again, a lot of dads I know don't really spend a lot of time talking about work with their family anyway. So, especially since I've written a book, that's something we talk a lot about these days, which is a lot more, I feel it's better because I can talk a little bit more about work than I do normally when I talk about my counseling work.
What made you want to write that book?
Mainly because I was told by lots of people that this is good material, that this is something that people shouldn't have to go see a counselor just to learn about. So I decided to go ahead and give it a shot and see if I could write a book.
What got you interested in parenting, which is what the book is about?
Well, I work with a lot of kids, and I kept seeing over and over again that if the parents learned some basic skills based on what their kid was doing, then a lot of times it would make a big shift for the family. So I figured that was probably the best book to write. Plus, I know if I wrote a kid book about counseling stuff, they probably wouldn't be as interested. So yeah. Parenting seemed like a good idea.
Mm-hmm. What were some of the challenges in writing the book?
The challenges was actually getting it done, taking the time. Nobody was telling me to do it. I didn't have to show up at a certain time. That it was hard to get that self-discipline to be able to sit down and get it done. And even when I would sit down to spend time on that instead of checking my email or going to Facebook or things like that. So that was the hardest part, was just the discipline I had to learn how to get it done.
And one of your friends, Hal Runkle, who you helped out with Scream Free Parenting, did he help you at all write your book?
He helped me with the ideas of how do you create a message? How do you create an idea on making something that's pretty complicated? Some of the stuff, these parenting techniques are pretty complicated. How do you say it in such a way that people will understand it in one sentence or two sentences? He has great skills at doing that, so I learned a lot from him on how to do that.
What tips would you have for future writers?
Do it, and not just write, but finish it and put it out there. There's so many easy ways. Even teenagers can write books these days and get it on Amazon with not a lot of work. So the biggest advice I give people is give it a shot, put it out there, see if people will buy it.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
In the interview, it showed how smart Neil is and how he never gave up in finding that one career he really enjoyed. One thing I found interesting is that he really didn't receive much help in finding a job or writing a book because no one around him had the experience. He was able to do much of it on his own. Even if you don't know what you're going to do by college, finding something you love to do will not be hard to find.